doesn't happen, we can do it with this camera. Okay, Nikos, your thoughts on how the war is going? Have your thoughts changed since 13 days ago when we last saw you?
So my prediction 13 days ago was that the war would end soon because the West is not, the term that keeps coming back to my mind is not fit for fight. So there is this term called fit to fight, right? When they say fit to fight, they don't just mean can you throw punches? It means have you got the whole package that is needed in order to fight? So, for example, the psychology, the mental composure, the stamina, and things like that. So here we have the following mystery. We have a military victory which is in a scale which is almost unprecedented. It's very rare that you do so much damage to an enemy with so little damage inflicted to you. And yet at the same time, the West seems to be panicking, and it is panicking about a war that it is winning overwhelmingly. So imagine what would happen if it wasn't winning so overwhelmingly. So what does this? Why is this important? Because for one more time, the enemy, the people we're fighting, they are hitting the West exactly in its weakness. So this is the only way an underdog can win. So, for example, to bring an example from sports, if you are a team and which is not a very good team and you play with a powerhouse, but you know the powerhouse is bagged, let's say, in pick and roll defense, you hit them all the time in pick and roll. So this weak opponent is hitting us exactly where we hurt. So, for example, in Gaza, they know that the big gap in the West is the morality that we follow. Therefore, a war that they started and a war that they're losing overwhelmingly, what do? They focus on this weakness that we have, that, we are the weaker side and you are overwhelmingly defeating a weak side. Therefore, we should always care for the weaker side, no questions asked. Therefore, this is how the military victory in Gaza becomes a strategic non-victory. And in this case, the West has made all these mistakes for decades, relying on these region, on these regimes for its energy, for example, for its energy provisions. And we've known already from the 70s that these people know very well how to hurt us. They did it around Yom Kippur. They've done it before. What were the lessons that we learned? The lessons that we learned is that we should be even more relying on thuggish regimes after the 70s. Now, we relied in Russia, luckily not so much after Ukraine. So what is this opponent that the West is facing doing? Again, it is capitalizing, it is exposing very accurately the weaknesses that the West is having. So it looks like the West is not winning a war that it is overwhelmingly winning. Why? Because it is not fit for fight. It has the punches, but it hasn't got the moral composure. It hasn't got, let's say, the stamina. It hasn't got in order to fight a war. So the West is not fit to fight. And this is a wake-up call because, unfortunately, the West will have to fight battles in the future. And the more fit to fight it is, the less battles, ironically, it will have to fight.
All right, a couple of things. First of all, your prediction was wrong. You actually had a date where you thought the war would be over by, and it still isn't over, and it doesn't look like it's over. So that prediction, luckily for all of us, was wrong. But I don't think it was necessarily wrong in the sense that I'm sure Trump would have liked your prediction to be right. And he, made no secret of trying to get out of it, trying to get the off-ramp that they were talking about in the All In podcast. Iran isn't allowing him to cut and run and declare victory when it's actually defeat. They are forcing him to continue to fight. Israel is there for it. Like, Israel is doing the dirtier work in this war than the U.S. And it is one of those situations where, Trump probably doesn't want to do the right thing, but is ending up doing the right thing. And also, by the way, painting the West with a broad brush. Remember, you're then including people like Pedro Sanchez and Keir Starmer alongside Trump and Netanyahu, which is unfair to Trump and Netanyahu in terms of how they've been conducting this war, which is everything you say about the West being unfit to fight. I completely agree. But the U.S. and Israel are in the best shape of Western countries, and they are showing it in a way that we haven't seen. Again, not in my lifetime.
Okay, I'll be a bit. Let's disagree again here. I'm not sure about the United States because I still don't see what the end game here is. Like, let's say every day there are some very prominent targets hit in Iran. Okay, and let's say there are now ships going towards the Hormuz, and they will do some policing operations. Okay, then what? So play out for me the good scenario. I'm curious to hear it from you.
What is the question? What is the good scenario?
Yes. How does this unfold? Let's say every couple of days there's a new supreme leader. Let's say he's eliminated. Let's say a new supreme leader is eliminated once every week. Let's say 3 times every week a Basid's leadership member and an IRGC leadership member is eliminated. Okay, help me see how this ends. And when?
And like lower command as well. Remember, Basij forces are now terrified, and Iranians are giving the IDF their location. So Basij forces can come after protesters if and when they come out to try to take down their government. They'll hear drone sounds, whether or not it's drones or Iranians playing drones on their car radio, and they will run. So.
Good. We gave the Basids PTSD. Okay. Later, what happens then?
We continue to kill them. We continue to kill them wherever they are, wherever they pop their head out from their tunnels or wherever they're hiding. And yeah, I think at some point, look, if Tehran falls,
wait. At some point, when? Because so, do you think this can go on for more than 2 more weeks? For example.
It absolutely can. Will it? Is a different question. But yeah, of course it can go on for. First of all, Trump said 4 or 5 weeks to begin with. In recent days, he has taken timelines off the table. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, Israel can definitely go for longer than that. And I think if you look at the operations in Lebanon, they're preparing. Lebanon is not going to end in a couple of weeks. Lebanon.
Okay, forget that. That's a different war theater. So you're telling me that you think that the Gulf states, for example, running out, from what I understand, I'm not an expert, of interceptors, being more vulnerable to strikes from Iran. Of course, Iran is also running out of things to strike them with. But so you think the Gulf states can maintain this situation for more than 2 weeks, and they're not going to go to Trump and saying every day, harassing him, hey, this needs to stop, this needs to stop, this needs to stop. And this will also be amped by the Europeans. You see, even the Greek prime minister the other day was like, oh, well, this is not our war. Please stop, please stop. So you think that this can go for more than 2 weeks?
As far as the Gulf states are concerned, first of all, the sources where I hear, the news sources where I hear that they're running out of interceptors are the same ones where I hear that Israel is running out of interceptors, that the U.S. and Israel are running out of precision offensive weapons. And the same sources where I heard on day 2, hang on, you killed the supreme leader, the regime hasn't fallen yet, you clearly have lost the war. And I hear this to this day. So I don't know if I can count on that. And if that is true, well, maybe that'll bring the Gulf states to actually fight or participate in their own defense. I have to say, I don't really care about the Gulf states. If bad shit happens to them, the question is, will Trump withstand the pressure from them?
That's a question.
I do think Trump will withstand the pressure from Europe, and this might not be due to positive aspects of his personality, but his response to Europe is the correct one, which is disgust at their weakness and public condemnation. And I hope that continues. I hope he remembers, as he says he will, who stood with him, which is Israel, and who stood against him, which is Europe. While Europe itself, European countries are being attacked. At least one French soldier has been killed. Europe is going to suffer a lot more from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz than America will. So, I don't know, what I would like to see. And again, this could go either way. What you're saying could happen. They could pressure Trump into backing off. It could be that they would be pressured into Trump by Trump saying, "I don't care if you have oil shortages. You participate," and then they might participate. That's also a possibility.
Yeah, and again, when I say I'm just asking questions here, I'm not doing it in the Candace own way. I'm literally asking questions because, look, I would be very embarrassed if I pretended I'm an expert. There are people who spend their whole life trying to understand the military situation in one particular area. They know 100 million times more than I do on this topic. So I'm genuinely just asking questions. So the one thing that I can evaluate for sure, as certainly as we can, is that the United States did not enter this war with a clear plan and did not end this war with a clear outline of what they wanted to achieve. This doesn't mean this is not a virtuous war. This is the most important war the West has fought, I think, since World War II. It's more important than Korea. It's more important than Vietnam. It's more important than any other, definitely more important than Iraq. But again, this does not mean that we cannot see that it was not entered with a clear outline in mind. The producer says something, but with my new out thing, I can't see what he's saying.
Okay, all right. The producer is mostly joking in the background here. But there's a super chat from Roman Viking. Thank you, Roman, for the super chat. Roman says EU countries withdraw their anti-ISIS forces from Iraq because they withdrew because they came under fire. They can't even generalize from Sunni to Shia Islamism.
Well, yeah, the EU countries are morally bankrupt. Half of them have recognized the Palestinian state, which is, again, the worst injustice you can do, first of all, not only to Israel, but also to Palestinians who want to live. So I don't expect anything from them. My worry is not what the Europeans will do. My worry is, so let's say, for example, that next week Iran starts shooting oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. Is this completely out of the is this in the realm of the impossible? So again, I don't know how much Trump can withstand pressure, not from the Europeans, but from people that he considers that he has them in their pocket, that they understand him, that they are his buddies. So again, the only reason I'm worried is not the military situation. There have been many wars in history where you can win all the military battles and lose the war. It happened in Vietnam. Americans literally won all the main battles. They lost. The French in Algeria, they won all the major battles, they lost the war. And because till now, no one has shown me what is a good case scenario of how this plays out, this is why I'm still not optimist. I haven't got this scenario that will persuade me that, okay, I could see this playing out. For example, I hear people saying, let's throw guns from the air. Let's throw like weapons. Let's parachute weapons in. Like, can you picture this in your town? Let's say we live under a dictatorship, and let's say they parachute to you weapons. Would you know the first thing what to do with them? It's like, this is not simple, right? It's not simple. Like, they're gonna parachute weapons, and now suddenly Razi and Nikos is gonna pick up weapons and know how to shoot them. I mean, I know how to shoot some weapons because I've been in the army. The average person out there does not know how to shoot weapons. I don't know if the average Iranian. So all the good scenarios I've heard about how this war will end are not scenarios that I view as realistic scenarios. The scenario that I consider realistic would be the scenario of the Iranian uprising. We haven't seen this yet, but this doesn't exclude anything. So let me give you an optimist scenario so that I'm not just black-pilling everyone here. Remember what happened in Serbia in 1999 with the bombing campaign of NATO against the Serbian dictator Slobodan Milosevic. Milosevic did not fall during the bombing campaign. Milosevic fell on September of 2000, one whole year after the bombing campaign. So what the bombings did is that they weakened Serbia. And then Milosevic fell after a year. So something like that would happen here. But this is just a wish. I haven't heard a single person who has a reasonable plan of how this war is going to end. And again, we're all wishing it will end in a good way, but wishing won't make it so. So it's a battle of time. It's a battle against the clock. Will something that we hope will happen but hasn't happened yet, will this happen before before the West or before Trump loses his composure. And I'm not sure about that at all.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you for being a member of the YouTube channel for 46 months. Bonnie asks, what does Nikos think should happen? Nikos, you're now Trump and Netanyahu both back off and appoint you the minister of war for both countries and the person running the whole show.
So first of all, Bon, thank you so much for the question, but I would be disrespectful to you if I pretended I have an answer. Like I have difficulty to exactly point to you in the map where the Hormuz strains are. I don't think there are more than 10 people in the world who can tell you what should happen, because what should happen requires information that we don't have, knowledge that we don't have. Actually, these two things. We don't have neither the knowledge nor the information. So, for example, I've been hearing throughout this operation that there are infiltrators within Iran, that are there are Mossad people who try to make things happen on the ground. Again, talking about such a huge country, do we even realize how many such people would have to be there? It's not actually easy to make a revolution happen. It's not that you can order it from Amazon and it would come. So apologies, people. I don't know what should happen, because I don't think there are many people who can give an answer to this question.
I can't accept that answer, because you are able to give us all the pessimistic scenarios that you think are happening, and you can't say.
Okay, you tell me what should happen. I'm very curious to hear you. You tell me what should happen.
No, I want to know what you say should happen. I told you what should happen. We should keep going. If need be, troops on the ground. If it takes years, it takes years.
Wait. Troops on the ground? Troops of whom?
Preferably the U.S., but Israel as well if needed. There is no question here that the Iranian regime falling should be the goal. How to achieve that goal then is a matter for people who, you're right, we're not the ones. But we do know, generally speaking, what the maximum firepower of both the United States and Israel is. And if you need to escalate what you're using, do so. There's no scenario where the U.S. and Israel stop. If they're doing things right, there's no scenario where they stop, and this regime is still in power.
Okay, so you are suggesting an Iraq situation. I'm not saying it's wrong, but this is what you're suggesting. So
No.
You're suggesting going to Congress, saying, "Hey, we need to send, let's say, 250,000 troops." And Congress is going to say yes, and Trump is still going to be in power.
No, first of all, I'm not suggesting. Iraq was nation building. The Saddam Hussein, the Iraq war was won, and it was won easily and decisively. It took 20 days to remove Saddam Hussein from power. What the U.S. failed in with its coalition of the willing was to do nation building. That should not happen. I told you and Jim Brown and Michael Kaufman in our debate, there's a range of what I count as victory. The absolute best case scenario is a free Iran that we can all escape to and ask for asylum when shit hits the fan here. The entry level to what counts as victory is a Syria situation where you have somebody bad in power. I don't think it's exactly going to be a serious situation if it comes to that. But a situation where you have people you don't like in power, but they have not just no offensive capabilities, but no ability to build offensive capabilities. Because of where Iran is, again, I think it should be more than that. And so the Syria situation might be, you have the country fractured, scattered into different groups. Some sort of if there's some sort of civil war, again, it would be tragic.
See, here's the problem, right? You already see here the chaos. So one good case scenario, we say, is for Iranian people to take faith in their own hands and remove the regime. Okay, but you cannot say then that the second scenario is civil war Syria type situation, because if I'm an Iranian, I'm like, oh my God, I don't want that. I'd rather live under these crazes, but at least tomorrow I take my car and I go to work and I have a country, rather than live in a Mad Max situation. And this is also like remember a week ago, some people had the brilliant idea, let's send the Kurds in. Like, seriously, you're going to tell the Iranians, stand up to remove your regime, and the way we're going to do it is send a force which might want to split your country into like 2 or 3 parts. So you see, this is not a very attractive sell. So you cannot go, and it's like you're stuck in an elevator and you press every single button hoping it will work. Like, hey, let's hope we can destroy, we can divide Iran to different smaller, weaker countries. We might have regime change. We might bring back the son of the son. Like, it has to be one of these. You cannot say my goal is all of these things together, because these things are contradictory to each other. You're not going to have liberal Iranians rise up in order to end up in a Mad Max situation like in Syria.
You never know where things are going to lead. So it's not like Iranians are going to sit back, relax, and say, okay, we know that if we go out now to the streets, look, they took to the streets by their millions a couple of months ago, knowing how bad it's going to be, and tens of thousands of them were slaughtered, and still many tens of thousands were still protesting in universities even before this war started. So they want to remove the regime. And as the US in Israel, your job is not to replace the regime, it's to remove the current one. So if that is put as the goal, and the help that is provided to anybody rising up is the removal of anybody who's in their way, to whatever extent it can be done, and it can be done to a great extent from the air. It can be done. A lot of it.
But when you are the military power that starts this operation, you need to have something in mind. Let me give you an example. Not a good example, historically. The war in Iraq. Many months before the war in Iraq started, the inner circle, Bush, Condi Rice, and Rumsfeld, and these people, they knew exactly who would be the next Iraqi government. And all the discussion was like, is this the guy or is it going to be that the guy? So there was a very clear scenario, what's going to be the day after. Same thing when the Allies were going in Germany. Years before the fall of Reichstag, Churchill had agreed with Stalin who is going to get what, right? This time you start a war, and not only you don't have clear in your mind what's going to happen the day after, you don't even know what you want to achieve out of this war. So again, this is not to say this is not an important war. This is not to say we're not in awe of what is happening in the military field. 3 days in the war, I made a video claiming that Israel should be considered the pound for pound, the best army in history of humanity. Like where the Spartans are, even above. This has nothing to do with this, though. You cannot start a war and not even have an approximate scenario of what you want to achieve. And I would be very happy if there are some people there who have this scenario and they just haven't told us. It's just that knowing Trump, I'm afraid that this scenario does not exist. I'm afraid that Trump is going to take whatever he can, and he can change his mind every other day. And I mean, I feel I'm embarrassing the audience by saying this. It's so obvious. I'm like Captain Obvious here. So
yes, but again, Trump's unpredictability could be that, look, Netanyahu probably knows how to talk to him and might be able to turn him from, okay, we should find the off ramp to you should get pissed off. Remember, you're comparing it to Iraq. Iraq was called Operation Iraqi Freedom. This is epic fury, and I guarantee you they would have called it epic fucking fury if they thought they could get away with it like that. This is a different thing. Listen to Pete Hegseth. This is how people should talk in war. Now, are they gonna fully go again? The question mark is justified not just by the issues with these people, Trump and his people, but like you said, every Western attempt at fighting a war since World War II. Okay, I want to go to a comment by Roman Viking and get your thoughts on it, and then I have another question for you. Roman Viking says, the Europeans should be forced to help with the strait because they will lose every day they don't help. Higher prices, more money for Putin. Now, this is another thing, Nikos, which I, of course, do not like, but Trump kind of somewhat easing sanctions on Putin is something Europe doesn't like, and he can say, well, I don't want to do this, but we're fighting a war, and if you want to help out, then we don't have to do this.
How exactly will the Europeans help out? Help me understand this. So someone
And
thinks out there's some Europeans who have a logistics or information or naval power that will do a better job at the Straits than the United States or I don't know, Japan or whoever else is saying it. Like, except from thoughts and prayers, what does Europe actually can offer here?
well, the US and Israel are focused on certain things, and Europe can focus on the thing that is of their concern. And so, in that sense, yeah, I agree. Also, Europe can help with interceptors. That's
No,
yeah.
Ukraine can help with interceptors. I'm not sure exactly how Europe can help with. So I think, I mean, no offense to our friend Roman Viking, but I do you know how bad the public opinion on this is in Europe? So again, the government of Greece, which is a center-right government, which prides itself that it is the only political force in Greece that has Greece tied to the West. This prime minister yesterday went out of his way to say, we want nothing to do with this war. And you think that somehow Greece or any other such country, not to mention countries like UK or Sanchez in Spain, I mean, do you think that they're going to send army to be on harm's way? Can you imagine what's going to happen if one Greek soldier dies out or gets injured from the shrapnel of a Shahid? It's going to be the fall of the government. So again, unfortunately, the political reality in Europe is so hopeless that these scenarios that Europe can help in this is they couldn't even restrain half of the countries in Europe themselves from recognizing a Palestinian state, and they're gonna send help to fight Iran. Again, guys, we have to talk based on what the reality is, not what we hope the reality would be.
So the reality is, Britain was attacked on the second day of this war. France was attacked, and France, the first thing Macron said was he's against this. So France was against this. They were attacked, and one of their soldiers died. And yeah, that's where you question. Okay, these countries are not, it's not shrapnel that fell. They were attacked intentionally. And yes, they can. By the way, what you can say is also, if you guys are attacked again, we're not going to, waste our interceptors on saving you. That's another thing. I mean, there are ways, I think, still to pressure Europe. And if it's unpopular, what's unpopular?
Okay, so what is missing to win this? Wait.
Hang on, wait. With Britain,
so what is missing to win this war?
Majorities in history. Wait. In the polls.
So what is missing to win this war is more European intervention. Is this what you guys are telling me?
This war will be won without Europe, but things.
So why are we even discussing Europe?
Because things could go bad before they go better when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and the impact mostly or specifically on Europe compared to the US. So yeah, there's a lot of ways the US can actually pressure countries still. And it has to be specific countries, and it could be specific countries that have what we need, that may have been already attacked. I think more can be done on that front.
Yeah, but that's not going to make the difference between winning this war, or actually forget winning with us, bringing this war to a conclusion that is desirable and not. So again, we go back to the same point. There is no scenario that we can both see and say, let's get there, and if we achieve this, then we're good. We just hope that something is going to happen, which is, I mean, it's okay, but that's what's happening. Let's be clear about what's happening.
Europe won't win this war, but they can ease the pressures on the world economy while the war is being fought. So in that way, I think they can help. Also, Galut Greg says the UK has minesweepers, supposedly. I mean, yeah, these countries could have technologies. I know the very idea of going to war and then needing the French to help you win is like a joke, and a joke that never gets old. But they do have some technologies that could be helpful in specific ways. And the Strait of Hormuz being closed is directly affecting them. So they should.
Well, okay, but again, they should. But should, I think I think our friend Jonathan told me this. There is this Israeli phrase that says something like "should" is anyway. It basically means that "should" means nothing. Should is is just a word.
Yeah, but it becomes more of a word when you're, when shit hits the fan and they actually feel the pressure on their own bank accounts. And again, look at these leaders. None of them are popular. Like Starmer is not. Yeah, the war is not popular, but neither is Starmer with his opposition to the war, and he hasn't gone up from fourth place in the polls.
Okay, let's talk UK. Let's talk UK, the context that both of us are more familiar with. So we know Starmer. Okay. Farage is in a very difficult position because if he supports the war, then he's under a lot of pressure from the right, from from the Reclaim Party, which is against the war. So, what are the political forces in the UK that can push the government to intervene in the war? It's not going to be the Labour Party itself. The Conservatives maybe, but it's irrelevant. And even the Reform, which is the leading party, this is the most thorny issue for them because they're going to get a lot of pressure from the right not to participate in the war because there is the phantom, there is a ghost over the UK, which is the ghost of Blair and the Iraq war, which is, again, it shouldn't be like that, but it is the absolute story. It is the archetype story of messing up in a wrong war and having no idea what you're doing there and why you are there. So, yeah, the UK is a good example of why it is political. I don't want to say suicide. Let's not put it suicide. It's political gamble to support the war. If you have a semi-decent government, with the government that you have in the UK, it's not going to happen.
Well, again, let me remind you what Starmer is. He is not an ideologue. He's not a left-wing ideologue or any other type of ideologue. He is a what are the polls telling me to do ideologue. And the polls are telling him not to go to war, but the polls are also will probably tell him that people don't like high energy prices and high everything prices that are going to happen. And if he can, if there is strong enough opposition to point out what he can do, then maybe he will consider. Remember, he did change his policy on this war. He said America can't use bases, including the one that's a joint base. And now that has changed.
To be honest, I don't think Trump asked him, but
yeah. No, he changed. No, after the base in Cyprus was attacked, there was a change in policy. There was also a change in policy with Spain. Spain, that was, Sanchez was considered a hero for like 16 hours or however long it lasted before he changed his mind, and caved. So more can be done. But yeah, anyway, let's move on because there's a couple of other things I wanted to discuss. Thank you, Jonathan Honig, for gifting an Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube membership, and congratulations to Roman Viking, very well deserved for receiving that membership. Somebody says that Jonathan didn't know the All In podcast. Odd. I guess you guys were talking about it before I joined. My few times watching the All In podcast, but the most shocking thing about it is that this is such a big deal because they are so bad. Again, they were praising the how do I put it kindly, unintelligent poster boy of the right, Nick Shirley, a real embarrassment of a human being, but he's young.
Is this the guy who goes and exposes the Somali fraud situation, supposedly? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard him in an interview?
No, I've just read the fact basing on that. I mean, initially I was also like, wow, this boy is doing such a great work. But then you dive a deeper. And then I saw him that tweet or just asking question about the Jews or something like that. And then I was like,
yeah. But even before the thing about the Jews, I heard him actually attempt to speak in an interview, and he is not an intelligent person. And it was really embarrassing to listen to. And that was in the All In podcast. And the last thing we did, I don't know if you saw this commentary from David Sachs on the All In podcast a couple of days ago. That was next level. Actually, you know what, Daniel, if you can queue up just the minute or so of David Sachs, because I want to get Nikos' reaction.
Okay, wait. First of all, I've been dealing with some context here I need. I've been dealing with stuff in my life in the last couple of months. I've lost contact with much of what's happening in the world. What is the All In podcast?
Okay, great. So that's the thing. This was my comment to the person. Yeah, the All In podcast might be famous, but it's not good. And it's these four guys who are pretty prominent, and they talk about stuff. And apparently, they talk about investing, and people care about what they say about that. Uh, but they are pretty prominent. Yeah, David Sachs is one of them, and you're going to hear from him in a
Wait,
bit.
the famous David Sachs.
Yeah, the guy who is Trump's technology czar,
Okay.
which is pretty amazing when you hear what he has to say. So, yeah, people who are proud to know the All In podcast, I'm not sure you should be. Anyway, somebody. Actually, no, I'm not going to deal with this troll comment. I like dealing with troll comments, but we only have Nikos for another 25 minutes. I want to make the most of it. I have a question for you before we go to the All In podcast.
Sure.
What does happen if Trump backs off, gets his off ramp, declares victory tomorrow or a week or even a month from now when we know it's not a real victory?
What happens then is that Iran has cracked the code on how to deal with the West in the same way that Hamas has cracked the code in Gaza. How did Hamas crack the code? They said what we're going to do is inflict as much pain to our own citizens and thus blackmail the world. So we're going to have killed as many, we're going to let as many Palestinians die or provoke their death. And this is how we put pressure in the world. And they figured out that this works. They cannot do much now, but they figured out for future reference that this tip, this strategy, this approach works. This is going to be also the lesson that the Iranians get, that if we blackmail the world by destroying the energy security of the world, including our own energy security, by the way, this is what we're going to do next time. Now, hopefully next time the West, we could say, is going to be in a better shape to face them. But seeing where the West is going, I'm not sure at all about that. So it will be a strategic victory for the Iranians if the war stops. And this regime has figured out that we terrorize the whole planet to go to Trump and beg him to stop a war that he was winning. So imagine if next time, which I don't think it will happen, but imagine if next time Iran is in a better position, that their leadership is not eliminated like the novel and then there was none. Imagine then what blackmail they can do to the world. So there is, yes. So you see, reality gives to us this very, very weird dilemma that there is a war without an end in sight, without a strategic aim which is clear. And at the same time, this war, if it ends without a clear victory, it's going to be a strategic defeat. A strategic defeat, not tomorrow, not in 2 years, but all this, and not only Iran, other regimes as well will get the lesson that the way to strong arm the West is to blackmail them in the worst possible way. Not to include other possibilities, as for example, the Iranians might now decide that, yeah, the proper strategy is not to blackmail the world by telling them that in 2 months we can make a bomb. Maybe the way to go is to actually blackmail them by saying we already have a bomb. Again, because Israel intelligence is so good, I don't think this could happen. But do you know where we're going to be in 5 years, in 8 years, with a different administration in the US? Maybe even with a different administration in Israel. So that's why I don't want the prospect of even a long-term remote strategic possibility of victory for Iran.
Yeah. Your scenario, if we back off, is not as bad as my scenario, which is an invitation to China to go after Taiwan now, yesterday, because if the U.S. can't fight for more than a couple of weeks against Iran with Israel, having completely destroyed their defensive capabilities and almost most of their offensive capabilities, and we're still backing off. Yeah, this says to China, nothing to worry about. This says to Russia, you know what? If you haven't nuked Ukraine, for example, because you were worried about the reaction from the West, Don't be worried about the reaction from the West. Look at how they fought in Iran.
Yeah, they're
So
not gonna nuke Ukraine. But let me make it even worse for you. The way Iran can blackmail the world is by semi-closing the Straits of Hormuz, and the war is in terror. Imagine how China can blackmail the world. Again, I don't have the tactical knowledge to tell you exactly how, but it wouldn't be inconceivable that they can affect, for example, things like your internet provision or things like that. Again, I don't know, but it's not inconceivable that the China can blackmail the world in a much worse way than in Iran can blackmail the world. So yes, this will definitely be the wrong message.
thank you, Ginger, for the super chat. Ginger said, "Hi, Nikos. Good to see you."
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, it's not a super chat, but thank you anyway. Somebody else who says dictatorial regimes always seem strong until they suddenly collapse. And then somebody else also says, "What is this? The Doomsday Edition?" Yes, this is Nikos. Nice to meet you. And yeah, that is Doomsday stuff. But can we just agree, Nikos, at the very least, that all things considered and everything we've just said, we need to see this through, even if it's uncomfortable. Trump was selling his tariff crap and the hardships that caused as, oh yeah, don't worry if prices rise a little bit, you can soldier through it, or whatever the hell he said. You can definitely do that at a time of war.
Yes, sure, guys. But again, we should never start a war without knowing at least what we're trying to do here. So my complaint here is that it's not why this war happened, it's how this war started, and that I wouldn't trust this guy to do way simple stuff than trying to go after one of the worst regimes in modern history. So and you see why it would be better. It would be better not to start this war and try to undermine a regime in a different way, rather than start a war that might end up as a strategic, in the long term, defeat. So that's why when you start a war, you have to be very, very clear what you want to do, and you have to at least communicate it to your own people. Remember in the early days of the war, where every member of the administration had a different story of why we are in the war. Or maybe I confuse this with Venezuela. Oh, wait, no, it happened in both cases. In both cases, first we go in, and then we try to figure out exactly what we're trying to do. This is a recipe. I don't want to say disaster, because then you're going to tell me I'm doomsday. This is a recipe for undermining your military successes. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, I agree with you. The goal should have been regime change from the start. The goal, I think, now at some point, Iran will force Trump to have regime change as a goal, even if he doesn't acknowledge it publicly. And yeah, again, Trump might not be doing, definitely isn't doing the right thing for the right reasons. But if he's doing it for the wrong reasons and ends up in the right place, that's the best. That's better than anything we've gotten in the 47 years of this regime. Salome says communist China has been blackmailing the world for decades. True, but the world has not exactly resisted the blackmail. So
not only the world hasn't resisted, the world has actually facilitated China's blackmailing in the last decades. Who made China a world-level superpower? Who invited China to G8, for example? Who decided to invest heavily in China? Do you know where China? So there is this misunderstanding that there was this Chinese miracle because the Chinese decided to do something completely different. No, the Chinese miracle was mostly what had to do with how China opened itself to the world. But opening yourself to the world requires two parts. It requires you being open to the world, and then the world coming in for a quick buck or for an investment that looks sound. And then down the road, not even in the distant future, 2 decades in down the road, you find yourself in that situation. Speaking of which, seriously, by coincidence, I have it behind me. I encourage people to read this book, China After Mao by Frank Dikötter. right? And the rise of a superpower. It actually makes this case that what we have in mind as the miracle of China is a completely skewed idea. It did not happen because of any Chinese miracle. It actually happened. It happened despite what the Chinese regime did, not because of what the Chinese regime did. So I encourage people, if you're interested in China, read the whole trilogy. The cultural, the tragedy of liberation, the Great Famine. I have it in Kindle. I can't show it. And the Cultural Revolution, and the fourth book, China After Mao. I think now he also released a fifth book, but I haven't read it yet. I had these books because I was teaching that course in ARU on communism. So I made a deep dive on China.
Well, that deep dive sounds like something people might want to hear more from you about. So one of the ways to do that and support Nikos's work now that he is an independent intellectual, the best way is to go to his Patreon and sign up. Daniel, if you can put that link in the chat, I believe it's already in the description.
Let me say something very quickly. So 5 days ago, I announced my Patreon. There are 3 levels of support. The first level, for what I call the conclave, it's only €7. Only €7 per month. With these €7, though, you get 2 Q&As every month. And one of these Q&A is what I call the Nerd It Out Q&A. So we pick one topic, and you can choose that topic by voting, and then we go deep in that topic. So it could be, let's say, I don't know, Stalin, Iran, Atlas Shrugged, Rothbard, whatever we think is the 6-day war, whatever. And then you ask questions only on that topic, and we go deep inside. Or every other bi-weekly Q&A, any question that you ask. And this is with the first tier of €7. There are 2 more tiers for people who want to support me in a more financially significant way. So I encourage people to go to my Patreon. I would really appreciate. And anyone who has ever worked with me, Razi included, knows that when we do business together and when you are a Patreon, it's like doing business. You always end up getting a lot of stuff and extra stuff, and I provide a lot of value because I appreciate people who want to do business with me. So I tell you what is the standard stuff, the 2 Q&As every 2 weeks that you get, but be sure there are more stuff coming in the way for the Patreon community.
When you sort of don't pay attention to the chat and then you look over and you see out of context a comment like, Bush puked in Japan, not China. Thank you, Salome, for that. I do actually remember that, but this was obviously a different conversation. But, people, you should sign up to that Patreon. And also, look at Nikos is a superstar in the objectivist movement. Unfortunately, in the wider conversation in the world, if you look at who is prominent, you see people like this. And keep what you're about to see in mind when you consider whether or not supporting Nikos on Patreon is a worthwhile goal. This is mainstream, right smack in the middle of the Overton window ideas. I don't know if I can call it that. Thinking, whatever. Let's take a look at what David Sachs said in the All In podcast.
Well, I agree that we should try to find the off-ramp. I mean, I agree with what Brad and Jamal said about that. Look, we've degraded Iranian capabilities massively. Their army, navy, air force all been destroyed. This is a good time to declare victory and get out. And that is clearly what the markets would like to see. You are seeing, however, a faction of people, I'd say largely, but not exclusively in the Republican Party, who want to escalate the war and who are calling for things like ground troops or regime change, or they simply want the pounding of Iran to just keep going on and on. I saw an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal to that effect, that we shouldn't try and find an off-ramp. We should just keep going with this. And I just want to lay out, I think, some of the risks of what an escalatory approach could entail. So first of all, we're all seeing that the Straits of Hormuz are closed right now. We don't want that to persist longer than it has to. But there are actually worse outcomes than that. So if the Iranians get hit, if their oil and gas infrastructure gets hit, they've already said they're going to engage in tit for tat retaliation against the Gulf states. And we saw there was recently the Iranians blew up this giant oil depot in Oman. You saw some of those images. They could continue to target the oil and gas infrastructure across the Gulf states. And if that happens, it won't really matter if the straits get reopened because you won't be able to restart oil and gas production in the Middle East. So that would be, I think, a much worse outcome that could result from escalation. Furthermore, there's an even worse, I think, scenario from there, which is the region is very dependent on desalination plants. I think something like 70% of Riyadh gets their water from desalination. I think it's something like 100 million people on the Arabian Peninsula that get their water from desal. I mean, it's basically a desert, right? And those desal plants are soft targets. You already saw there was one desal plant in Iran that got hit, and then it caused Iran, again, tit for tat to hit a desal plant. I think it was in Kuwait. I could be off about that.
Okay, you know what? I
But
do
in any
want to
event,
pause
if
here,
you see that,
because I want to get some of your comments, although we haven't gotten to the good part. And by good part, I mean the holy shit part. But Nikos, this is when you say the West doesn't have what it takes to fight. This guy, is saying, hold my beer. I mean, this is next level stuff. Look, this was day 12 or 13. Basically a list of things we can't possibly deal with and why we should cut and run now.
Okay, that's not gonna make me very popular. But do you actually think that the United States entered the war having in mind, first of all, having informed the public opinion about, hey, that's what we're trying to do, that's what might happen? Or do you think Trump actually has a plan on that? Or, I mean, cared to develop a plan on that? So the reason these questions arise is because there is no plan. And when there is no plan, such questions will arise. Now, whether I tell you that this is bullshit or this is legitimate is irrelevant because I haven't got an opinion and I don't have the knowledge to have an opinion on this topic. But I do not accept that these questions are completely crazy in a war that we don't know what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and we don't have a horizon of how we're going to do it. This is why you have then the space for such questions to arise. These are questions that will arise, and these are questions that at the moment, I mean, what would be your reply? Let's say you are in the window opposite of that guy. Reply.
My reply, first of all, would be if there was anything wrong in the way this war was being sold by Trump, and there was a lot wrong, it's that it wasn't sold clearly and strongly enough, and that the goals of the war, which, by the way, were very clear. There were clear goals. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Its ballistic missiles need to be gone, and it needs to stop supporting terrorism. So there were clear goals. These are not the goals I would
the
set
two
out.
goals are clear. The third goal is not clear because the third goal is, if not synonymous with regime change, synonymous with having a new regime with which you have then to negotiate. But then Razi would say no negotiation with anyone. So how can you get to the third goal?
Well, I'm not saying these are. I'm saying this should not have been. This is not what I would have put as the goals. But I'm saying when people said he didn't have clear goals, no, he had clear goals that were clearly stated. They were not the right. Again, they were not the right ones. There should be one goal: the Iranian regime is gone, and any offensive capabilities that regime could have to support or attack anyone else. Any remnants of it just will not exist after we're done. That's what I would have done. But you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have paused there because the really let me not set it up. Let's just hear what he has to say. He's getting to Israel in a bit. Let's hear it.
That type of destruction continue, you could literally render the Gulf almost uninhabitable. I mean, you're just not going to have enough water for 100 million people. And human beings just cannot survive very long without water. So that would be a truly catastrophic scenario. And we're talking about destroying the Gulf states economically and then also from a humanitarian perspective. So I think we have to take things like this into account when you hear people preaching for or advocating for escalation. You also have to, I think, consider the impacts on Israel. I mean, it's hard to know exactly how much damage Israel is taking right now. There's a social media blackout. But what you're starting to hear trickle out is that Israel is getting hit harder than they've ever been hit before in their history. And we're only 2 weeks into this. If this war continues for weeks or months, then Israel could just be destroyed. There are very large parts of it. Now, I think Israel is a harder target than the Gulf states. Their infrastructure is more hardened. Also, they're further away. The Gulf states are vulnerable to drones and short-range missiles, whereas Israel is mainly vulnerable to long-range missiles.
We heard the gist of it. We heard the gist of it.
When someone says something like this, anything they tell you, you dismiss it. If they tell you that today is Wednesday, you open your calendar and you check 3 times. Is it Wednesday or is this guy bullshitting me? By the way, this also applies to this other guy. What's the name with the Mensheim?
Mersheimer,
yeah. So this guy at the beginning of the war was predicting an hecatomb of deaths in Israel from the ballistic missiles. And saying this before the war is already questionable because we've seen the 12-day war not many months ago. But saying this now, it reminds me Comical Ali. You remember Comical Ali, the Iraqi guy?
Sure.
I mean, what a figure, right? The Americans were at the gates of Baghdad, and this guy was saying the Americans are committing suicide because they're all desperate. They are dying in swarms. So yes, this is absolutely ridiculous, and this should consider invalid everything else that this guy said. Having said that, the previous thing he said, a reasonable person could ask the same question, and it should be taken. It should be taken seriously. If not the desalination issue, but this question of how much damage can the Gulf states take? And this is a question again the answer to which I don't have. I wish though I could hear someone giving an answer to that particular question because it's an important question.
I definitely should have played you the whole thing at once because that was the moment. But again, this guy is still working. First of all, he starts, he works his way up. So he starts with nobody knows what's going on in Israel because there's a social media blackout. This guy is the the technology and AI czar at the White House. There is no social media. We have Eyal Reichel, Eyal. We have him on this show walking around Tel Aviv like doing selfies and stuff. But
Iyar, by the way, is a great guy. We're talking about the same Iyar, right?
I only know one Iyar.
Yeah, they Iyar. Yeah, I know him as Iyar, so I don't even know his surname. Anyway, we did a conference there a few months ago. I feel safe when I walk around with this guy. He gives me this aura of things are gonna be okay. So appreciation for Iyar.
That also helps when
what?
He also carries, so it also helps.
I didn't want to say this public, but
you said you feel safe around him. That's a big part of it. Am I not allowed to say that? Anyway, Daniel will fix it in post. Thank you, Gary, for the super chat. So there is no social media, but Israel has never been hit harder. Look, this was on day 12, I believe. We are now day 19. Even after the tragic death of the couple in Ramat Gan yesterday, the death toll is the lowest in the history of Israel's war. It is still lower than the death toll in some individual suicide bombings that took place in March 2002 and at other times. And again, these people have Trump's ear. So that is of somewhat concern. Then again, yesterday we heard of another one of them biting the dust and saying, I'm leaving because this is a war for Israel. So, the fact that they are in his inner circle is scary. But the fact that they are kind of showing themselves to be what they are is the redeeming factor there.
Yeah, but we know that Trump is a guy who is whispering in my ear, guy. So again, I lost the first bet, but maybe the second bet. I don't have a date in mind, but anyway. But as always, when I'm the pessimist, as always, I wish I will be wrong, and let's see.
Nikos, I think what the world really needs is you to join me on one of these streams, like for the whole day, like 7 or 8 hours of just the two of us, maybe some guests from time to time. Give Daniel a day off. First of all, yesterday people are going to cancel their ARC memberships if Daniel doesn't get a day off from time to time. And yeah, so we can talk about that behind the scenes. It'll be a day where we're going to expect lots of super chats, and all of them go to Nikos that day. That's also going to help. And your Patreon will be all over the thing. People,
So
if you
8 hours, and I'm also gonna be the producer. So without Daniel,
I'll be the producer. And but yeah, people, if you want to see that happen, go right now to Nikos's Patreon. Sign up to the highest level you can afford to without going bankrupt. And if there's a place to let him know there, let him know you came from this stream. You want to see that whole day stream happen at least once. Yeah, I will do my best behind the scenes to convince him against his will to make that happen.
I appreciate the call out. I appreciate the support. Remember back in the day how inconceivable it would be that when we're having this streaming, you would have things playing in the background. That would try to imagine this in the early TDOs in 2020, when the way this would go live is me calling you and say, "Hey, are you ready to press start?" So yeah,
yes, because I'm not a tech guy, but Nikos, one of the great things that we have now that we have proper producer and StreamYard is we can talk about things like, for example, we can mention that Mujtaba Khamenei, according to many reports, is gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
Nikos, come on, you need to. Okay, before the day-long stream that we are doing, hopefully in the coming days, only 10, 11 hours. We'll discuss how long. But you need to watch Seinfeld so that you can get some.
Well, I've watched the first seasons, but yeah,
You haven't watched the episode where they're confused. Somebody thinks they're a gay couple.
No, but anyway, I've been thinking of rewatching it. The thing is, I don't watch TV series. I'll finish with a story that was told to me by a very generous person and a very good objectivist who also used to be in tech, and this person knew Bill Gates. So the story is, and I've heard it from different sources, that Bill Gates did not have a radio in his car. And Bill Gates at some point needs to give a ride to someone, and the guy notices there's no radio. And he asks, how come you don't have a radio in your car? This was in the 80s. And Bill Gates says, if I had a radio, I would be listening to music when I was driving, and I wouldn't be thinking 24/7 about Microsoft. And he didn't say it in like a humble, like, oh, hustle, David Goggins way. He said it as a matter of fact. So I thought, how I'm aspiring to that. Unfortunately, I don't have that. I get distracted all the time, mostly with sports and all that stuff. But think of that single purposeness of even having a radio in my car is going to take me away from the reason I'm on this earth, from my mission on this earth. Anyway,
I'm now curious if that's who I think it is. I'll text you separately so you can let me know. Chandler asks for a Nikos sound clip, but he didn't ask for it in a super chat. So
what is a sound clip?
What you just heard from Seinfeld was a sound clip, and we want one from you as well.
Well, so, apparently there's an emoji, which I didn't know about it, but I saw the other.
There is an emoji. Remember, you gave us permission to use your likeness in perpetuity, which we are making the most of. By the way, Daniel, before we promote Nikos's Patreon one last time, can you remind people of another way they can show the world that they support Nikos by going to our shop and buying this Nikos Guevara T-shirt. With a sign of the
wait. With this, you support the ARCUK shop. I saw this online the other day. I burst into laughter. I had nothing to do with this, although when I saw it, I was literally laughing out loud. You know the term "lol." I actually lolled.
Well, look, if you show up to a talk, in a month or in a year, and everybody's wearing Nikos Guevara t-shirts, you will be, I think, slightly embarrassed, but also I think you'll enjoy it. So yeah, people, buy the shirt, go to Patreon, support Nikos, and let him know also that when that all day Nikos and Razi stream, the original idea for the Daily Objective when we first went daily with this channel was Nikos and me. I said to Nikos, we shout at each other on the phone for 20 minutes. Let's just do it on camera in front of the world. And he said, no, first of all, he said, this is the worst idea I have ever heard in my life. That was the first thing. And then you said,
this is an Israeli accent. That's not the Greek accent.
Also, you said only 70 people will watch. And I'm like, 70 whole people will watch? That alone is a reason to do it. So yeah, the Daily Objective has had, 1,700 episodes or something like that. And now we are on for hours every day. It only makes sense that one day, you and I, in the coming days, in this war, will do a day-long stream. All super chat proceeds go to Nikos, every penny. People, let him know that it should happen, and let him know that you're going to super chat in the thousands of dollars. I'm talking your own broke super chats. Okay, that's what needs to happen on that day. Because that
when I leave the Balkan interior rural land where I currently am and come to where you are in the metropolis, we can do it. This has to be live. It doesn't have to be Zoom. So do the
I
things
disagree,
you have.
but people, let him know. And Ozzy, thank you for the super chat. Ozzy says, do not give Daniel a day off. Daniel can be behind the scenes for that day if he wants, but he does deserve a day off at some point. Yes. All right, Nikos, I filibustered to keep you around. Thanks again. We will see you soon. Whether or not it's for the whole day, we'll talk about that separately. But thanks again. And
thank you. All the best. Bye-bye. How do I leave this?
Daniel will kick you out.
Oh, okay.